Recently, I've noticed a number of people on TikTok doing lives specifically discussing topics centered around the issue of transgenders. I've also had the opportunity to debate the topic with some hardcore activists and many trans people who've completed their transition or halfway through. Now, in some cases, part of the conversation was civil. However, most of the time, each debate ended with the host kicking me off.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here. Get out of here, man.
Not because I was offensive, it had more to do with the fact I wasn't accepting their explanations, or I kept reminding them that transgenderism wasn't supported by science.
You shut up! You shut up!
Now, if you do go on to one of their lives and use the word transgenderism, I just want to warn you, someone is going to correct you. Apparently, that's not an appropriate term to use anymore. Now, despite the fact I Googled it and there appears to be plenty of websites, news articles, and online dictionary definitions centered around the word transgenderism, I guess someone at the trans corporate office changed the rules on this and decided it's no longer the correct word. Now, I'm not exactly sure what their overall intent is by luring people on who don't support their choices and chosen lifestyle.
So please, opposition only, guys. If you are friendly, please unrequest.
I mean, they claim they want to help educate people. Yet, if you've had the opportunity to actually watch or take part in any trans debate, there's a high probability you're going to be condemned, called a bigot, a transphobe, along with an assortment of unique and descriptive putdowns.
And I want to look them straight in the eye, and I want to tell them what a cheap, lying, no-good, rotten, four-flushing, low-life, snake-licking, dirt-eating, inbred, overstuffed, ignorant, blood-sucking, dog-kissing, brainless, dickless, hopeless, heartless, fat-ass, bug-eyed, stiff-legged, spotty-lipped, worm-headed sack of monkey shit he is!
And don't be surprised if you hear the classic, "You need to go educate yourself," which is somewhat confusing because that's why I went on to their live to begin with. I mean, so someone could actually help me better understand how simply thinking they're a different gender means they actually are. Of course, then they try to go a step further, demanding I believe it's all backed by science, which of course it's not.
So this spectrum that does exist, even though there are two genders in your opinion, a male gender and a female gender.
Well, it's not in my opinion. It's not in my opinion. It is.
And of course, they verbally assault usually 90% of the people whom they fail to convince. Now, I'm not sure blasting and belittling those who don't agree with them is supposed to change minds. Yet I guess playing the victim is easier than being civil, respectful, and patient with those whom they disagree with. Anyway, one of the topics that came up recently was gender affirming care. And so I'm going to throw it over to Matt Walsh here, who's going to discuss how effective gender affirming care really isn't.
Sure. Well, the claim that doing the chemical castration drugs or surgery or hormonal intervention, the claim that this prevents suicide or has positive psychological effects down the line is utterly, totally baseless. There are no credible long-term studies that bear that out. And one of the reasons for that is that there couldn't possibly be any credible long-term studies because we've never done this to kids on this scale ever before in history. So this current, shall we say, crop of children, they are the guinea pigs. This is all experimental. We're sort of trying it out on them to see if it works. Now, they have attempted a few times to do studies, and the interesting thing is that the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, WPATH, which is a radical far-left pro-trans organization, they commissioned a study to try to prove that that hormones and puberty blockers decrease suicide rates among trans-identified youth, and even in their own study, they found that they couldn't prove it. They couldn't make that link because it's just not possible to do. The other thing I would mention too is that, the number of trans-identified youth has skyrocketed in recent years. We're talking about exponential 10x, 20x growth. Just huge numbers have increased. And what we hear from the pro-trans side is that, well, this is not a social contagion. It's just that, there's always been this many trans people. It's just that they were not in an affirming environment before in history, and so they couldn't come out. And now, for the first time, trans people have the ability to live their truth, so to speak. Well, if that's the case, and there have always been these sort of like millions of trans people, and if it's also true that if we don't affirm them, that it would cause them to commit suicide, then we should be able to look back in history and find just this unbroken, incredible epidemic of children mysteriously killing themselves because they weren't being affirmed as trans. And what you find is that that didn't exist. I mean, the youth suicide rate has increased exponentially alongside trans affirmation. So trans affirmation causes the suicide rate, not the other way around. The last thing I'll note is that the suicide rate among trans-identified people is sky high. It remains sky high. All the data shows this. It remains sky high even after surgery. And in fact, in the most reliable data that we have, it's years after surgery when suicidality is the highest for trans-identified people. That's the reality.